Hi, thank you for joining me today. We're reading A Course in Miracles, and we've been studying the student workbook, and we are on lesson 13, A Meaningless World Engenders Fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. Today's idea is really another form of the preceding one, except that it is more specific to the emotion aroused. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. However, it does not follow that you will not think you perceive something that has no meaning. On the contrary, you will be particularly likely to think you do perceive it. Recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones. It represents a situation in which God and the ego challenge each other as to whose meaning is to be written in the empty space that meaningless provides. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas there, fearful that the void may otherwise be used to demonstrate its own impotence and unreality. And on this alone, it is correct. It is essential, however, that you learn to recognize the meaninglessness and accept it without fear. If you are fearful, it is certain you will endow the world with attributes that it does not possess and crowd it with images that do not exist. To the ego, illusions are safety devices, as they must also be to you who equate yourself with the ego. The exercises for today, which should be done about 3 or 4 times for not more than a minute or so at each time, are to be practiced at a somewhat different way than the preceding ones. With eyes closed, repeat today's idea to yourself, and then open your eyes and look about you slowly, saying, I am looking at a meaningless world. Repeat this statement to yourself as you look about. Then close your eyes and conclude with, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. You may find it difficult to avoid resistance in one form or another to this concluding statement. Whatever form such resistance may take, remind yourself that you are really afraid of such a thought because of the vengeance of the enemy. You are not expected to believe the statement at this point and will probably dismiss it as preposterous. Note carefully, however, any signs of overt or covert fear which it may arouse. This is our first attempt at stating an explicit cause and effect relationship of a kind which you are very inexperienced in recognizing. Do not dwell on the concluding statement, and try not even to think of it except during the practice periods. That will suffice at present. So this is an interesting lesson. It's the first lesson, I think, where we hear about the ego. And let me just speak a little about the ego to help maybe make this lesson a little clearer. So there's a lot here to unpack. We are not our bodies. We think we are, but the spirit that we are, our soul, inhabits our body. Our body is our housing, and the ego is a function of the body. The ego is a function of that keeps the body safe. And when you start this work, it takes a little bit to come to understand where the ego ends and where divinity starts. That might not be the best way to say it either. But for this lesson, let's just leave it that the ego is what it's here to protect you. And it is what is interfering quite often with your ability to understand what really is happening in the world. And so let's leave it at that, I guess, for this moment. And then I want to just speak for a moment. A meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. That can be a little confusing statement as well. And as they say, don't dwell on it, and don't get too hung up on it. What's happening here is we are all divinity. Everything is God, everything. And so we're finding our way through these lessons to the wisdom that they contain. Thank you for joining me today. This is a challenging one.